Okay, welcome to lesson 2 on modelling this classwork. Today we're going to be focusing on the sort of tower sort of structure that I'm going to call it here. Remember in lesson 1 we did the base, we're going to add on this tower for lesson 2, and then we're going to add on lastly this web, which is lesson 3. Okay, so we need to study the dimensions of this tower. I'm going to start off with a rectangular structure and then put 2 rounds onto it. And then I'm going to put this slot here through the center of it later on. So we can see that it's got a length of 38 and the height would be equal to 76 minus the thickness of the base of 19, which gives us a height of 57. So I know that I've got a height of 57, a length of 38, and its width, well there's no measurement here, but we can see here there's a measurement saying it's 19 millimeters. So if that's the case, we can see this back edge here is coming up, around, and down. We'd assume that the back edge is lining up with the very back corner of the base there. So 38 by 19, I'm going to draw myself a rectangle that size there, and then I'm going to extrude it up with the 57 that's required. Okay, so over to Creo, and I'm going to select that surface there to draw on. So click on it, make it go red, click on the sketch icon, and go to references again, and then select this edge and this edge to give us some reference points. 2 will do. Really actually we only just need that point there. Now I'm going to go to my rectangle via the corner tool, click once, make sure it snaps in the back corner, and drag away. And then remember to get some dimensions on there, click onto the selection tool and drag your dimensions away. And we said it was, remember the thickness was 19, and I've had a mental blank as to what the other size was. Oops, going the wrong way. 38 by 19, so 38 there. And it's not a bad idea here to also, as you define a dimension, you're sure it's right, while it's still highlighted red, is to right click onto it and then to click on lock, which means that size will never change. For simple objects it's not that important, but when we start getting some more complex objects it's important to lock these dimensions. Okay, so I'm happy with that sketch, so I accept it, and you can see there it is there. So I'm going to extrude that sketch up, so click onto the extrude button, and it's defaulted upwards, which is correct, and for a distance of 57. Click OK. Hit the enter key, I should say. That looks correct. Click the green button to accept, and I'm using my center mouse wheel button here, moving around. I can see that's now correct. Okay, so back to the drawing. Going the wrong way. And we can see here that we have this distinctive semicircular round shape on top. So we could achieve that by drawing a semicircle, but there's an easier way in that we could apply a round to the 2 corners that we have there, and we can see that the radius of that round from the center to there is 19 millimeters. So back to Creo. I'm going to select this edge, and you see as I hover over it, it pre-highlights blue. And I'm going to do 2 edges at once. So I hold down the control key, not the command key, but the control key, and that allows me to select more than one thing at a time. This works for faces, edges, and so on. Then come to my round tool, and it's defaulted back to 19 because that's what I had before. Yes, and that's correct. So 2 rounds there at 19 millimeters, and click OK. Easy. Okay. Back to my drawing. Last thing to do is to put this slot here through the center. Now this slot is made up of a semicircle, and 2 straight lines joining that together. So that in reality there might be another bolt or something going through that slot, connecting this bracket to another object. So let's look at some of the geometry that's involved here. You can see we've got this long dash, short dash line running down the center, which indicates that that is the center of these circles, or center of these semicircles. And we can see that our radius 19 starts in the center of there and would be 19 millimeters from the center to that point. So we know the distance from the left-hand edge of the tower to the center there is 19, which makes sense because this is 38, which means 2 times 19. And if we have a look at some other geometry, we can say, well, from the very top down to the center of that circle there must also be 19, because that is a radius there of 19. So if we found, first of all, that center and drew that circle, and then we could draw the other circle below it and join those two together. So I'm going to show you a technique that we can do to achieve that. Okay, so once again, select the surface that you want to put a sketch onto. Click on the sketch icon. And this time I'm going to draw a circle by its center point. And I actually want to make the center of this circle, I think, exactly the same as the center of that arc there, or that round. So I'm just going to go check that. Yeah, you can see here the center of that circle there is actually the same center. So what I'm going to do is, before I draw the circle, I'm going to go back to my references again. And if I select this curve, you'll see it draws that circle in, and it actually puts the center of that arc that I've already drawn, or that round, there for me to use. So back to circle, and you can see how it snaps to it. Very handy. Click once, drag away, click again. Don't know how big that is yet. I'm not too concerned about exactly the right size, but what I'm going to do now is come down below that circle, and you can see here that the distance from that center to that circle was 19, so therefore the distance from the center there to that circle must be 19. Now let's have a look at our drawing. Let's have a look. From center to center says it's 19. So there's a nice coincidence. So as I move my cursor down, you can see that red dashed line appearing. That means that it is saying, or it's guessing, that I want to keep the centers of those two objects in line. Keep bringing it down until it locks on. You can see it locks on to the outside of that reference line, and click, and then drag away. Now as you drag away, you'll see as the two circles become the same size, a red R appears. That's a constraint, meaning a radius constraint. So if I click now, that means both these circles will always remain the same size. So if I go back up to my selection tool, you can see here it's applied an R1 constraint, meaning if I change this circle will also change with it. Well, let's test that out. Let's see, what is the radius of this circle? I think it was 13 from memory. Let's have a look. Well, actually the diameter needs to be 13. You can see here that's diameter, and Creo will always work in diameter, it won't work in radius. So back to Creo. The only dimension we can change is the one on top, because both of them are locked to equal each other. Type in 13 and enter, and you can see both of them then change because they have that radial constraint onto them. Okay, the last thing to do is to then join these two circles with some straight lines at a point of tangency. What that means is a line that touches the edge of the circle here and here, but doesn't cut it. So I'm going to go to my line tool and bring my cursor around where I think it's going to touch it, and you see how that red dashed line appears? That's saying, hey, you're in line with the center of this, and if I click there, that's going to be the start of the actual circle. Sorry, actually the line. Bring it down, and we should end up, if I can see, if I just bring my cursor a little bit further, see that T that pops up? I'll just zoom in a bit, it's a bit hard to see there. There's a little red T that pops up as I get close to the center of this one again. Now that T stands for tangency, which is what we're after, a line that touches the edge of the circle but doesn't cut it. So I click again, I'm happy with that, so then I center mouse click my mouse to finish that off. So I've got a line that's equal with the axis here, and it's tangent at that point there. If I can check that by using the select tool, see the T for tangency, and there it's equal with that axis. So I'm going to repeat that same process over here on the left hand side. Line tool, bring the center out, snap, come down below, wait for the T for tangency, click again, I'm happy that's right, so center mouse button to finish that off. Okay, now can I extrude this shape here now and poke it all the way through? Well, no, I can't, and there's a couple of reasons why. We can only extrude a series of lines if they form one continuous closed loop. So you might say, well, yes, they do, so they go around here and back onto itself. But we have these two semicircles inside here that are forming a loop with inside, and therefore our loop is not closed. So we need to remove these parts of the circle. And if I just go to my selection tool, you'll see here that the computer is, or the program is identifying where the issues are with these red dots. It's basically saying, hey, these red dots, there's either a gap or you've got 1, 2, 3 lines all joining at one spot, which is not a closed loop of lines or one single closed loop of lines. So what we need to do is to remove parts of these circles. So to do that, we come up to the delete segment tool, click onto it, and then you can hover over the part that you wish to delete. You can see it pre-highlights blue and click. Or alternatively, you can click and with your mouse held down on the left mouse, you can drag over what you wish to delete. Okay, go back to your selection tool and you can see I've got problems. So I zoom right in on that issue there and you can see I've got a little bit of a line hanging over there. So go back to my delete segment tool, zoom out again, go back to selection, there's my issue again, zoom in again, delete segment, make sure you click on selection, and now we can see that we now have a continuous loop of lines, no red dots, and the sketch has filled in, which means it is now correct. So with that, we're happy that the sketch is in the correct position, we accept it, and like we've done before, turn it side on, hit extrude, subtract, doesn't matter, can go all the way through, and accept. And make sure you save your work. Okay, ready for lesson 3.